Hello. I'm sorry I couldn't be there today with you, but I wanted to do the lesson in person just to make sure that everything was covered that I wanted you to know. Hopefully, it's not too cringy. All right. So, you are going to be reading from 2.4 Lines of Latitude. You may have talked about lines of latitude and longitude before. We're going to spend the day today working just on latitude, and then tomorrow we'll review latitude, but then we'll also move on to longitude, and then we'll put the two together the next day after that. I just want to do them one at a time so they're a little easier to pick up. All right. So what I need you to do now is I need you to follow along in 2.4 as I read it aloud to you. If there's anything that you think is important as you're reading, I might recommend that you underline it. So here we go. 2.4 Lines of Latitude. Suppose you wanted to describe the exact location of a place on Earth. To help you do this, mapmakers invented a system of imaginary lines around the globe. Some of these lines run east and west around the globe. They are called lines of latitude. Lines of latitude are also known as parallels. This is because they are always the same distance apart. So there's a couple important things in that first paragraph. One, these are imaginary lines. You can't actually see them. They're not there. We just know that we can say a place is at this amount and that's where we go with. All right. Then it also says that they are parallel. That means that they always stay the same distance apart. They will never run into each other or intersect or cross over. They're the same distance apart, kind of like when you're traveling on the road. Those lines are the same distance apart, so you stay in your lane and the other folks stay in their lane and nobody has an accident. All right, so let's go to the second paragraph. It says lines of latitude tell us how far north or south of the equator a place is. The equator is a line of latitude. It divides Earth into two halves, the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. Because the United States lies north of the equator, it is in the northern hemisphere. So, got me a really great drawing here. And what it told you was this: the equator is at 0 degrees. All right, it divides the United States or the world into two parts, the northern and the southern hemisphere. I like to think of the equator as kind of like a belt. So the top half is the northern hemisphere, the bottom half is the southern hemisphere, and we've got this belt of 0 degrees at the middle of the earth. Let's talk more. It says the equator is the starting point for measuring latitude. It is labeled 0 degrees or 0 degrees. Parallels north of the equator are labeled with a capital N. The North Pole is 90 degrees north. Parallels south of the equator are labeled with a capital S. The South Pole is 90 degrees south. Lines of latitude measure between 0 degrees and 90 degrees north or 90 degrees south. The closer a parallel is to the equator, the smaller its number of degrees. The closer it is to one of the poles, the greater its number of degrees. So, again, the equator is at 0. The higher up you go, the farther north you go, the closer to the North Pole you go, the numbers get bigger, and 90 is at the top. It does not get bigger than 90 for latitude. When we start there and we go south, the farther south we go, okay, we get closer to the South Pole. South Pole is 90 degrees. Again, there should be no numbers bigger than 90 degrees for latitude. So remember, these lines are running east and west. Let me draw some more in. Okay. So your lines of latitude are going like this. They're running east to west, but they're dividing the north and the south. When you look at a map and you try to find a place by stating its latitude, or you are given a latitude and then you're trying to find the place, you need to be looking at a couple of things, all right? So if you have this plastic map here, okay, the first thing you need to remember is you are finding latitude only today. So you are only going to look at the numbers that run on the sides of the map, okay? Same with the world side, the numbers on the side of the map. We're not worried about the top and the bottom, not until tomorrow when we do longitude. Okay, so if we were looking at the world side, we want to find the equator. It's supposed to be in the middle, right? So let's find our 0 degree line right there, this big black line. There's two other black lines. We're not going to worry about what those are today, but we will learn about them later. All right, so if I wanted to get to the North Pole, I would go north, and the higher north I go, the bigger the numbers get. If I wanted to go towards the South Pole, the numbers would get bigger the farther south I got. What you need to look at is what is the increments that this is in on the side. There's blue and white lines at the very side, and there's also numbers. So if I have the number 0, and then I have 15, and then I have 30, and then I have 45, I can tell that I'm counting by 15 degrees. But what you see between those 0 to 15 or 15 to 30 is a blue line, a white line, a blue line. Well, if there's 3 of those between 0 and 15, and that means each of those is going to be worth 5, and that will help you for finding things that aren't right on the line. We're really going to focus on what is right on the line at first today, and then we might venture off into stuff that is not quite just on the line. All right, so let's say that I wanted to find Manila in the Philippines. The Philippines is right here. Manila is a city in the Philippines. It just so happens to have its dot right on the blue line. So if I take my finger and I go straight across to where that is, it says 15 degrees. But it's not just 15 degrees. Remember, it's 15 degrees north because it is north of the equator. So when I wrote it, it would look like this. It would look like the number 15, a little tiny circle donut up here, and then a capital N. Please make sure that your degree sign is there, but you don't fill it in, so it shouldn't be solid, and you also make it really small. It shouldn't look like an O or 0. It's kind of up in the air, and it's tiny. You just need to make sure it does have that little hole in the middle, like a little donut. All right, so let's say I wanted to do something south of the equator. All right, maybe I wanted to go to Lesotho. Okay, so what I would do is I would find that. I would go over with my finger on that blue line, and there I go. I'm at 30 degrees. But because the equator is above me, that means I'm at 30 degrees south. So this is how I would write that. Give me a sec. So I would have to write 30, the number, that little degree sign again, and then I'm going with a capital S for south. You got to use a capital letter there, or that'll be really confusing for people that don't know what they're doing. All right, so today you're going to practice not only on the world side, but you're also going to practice on the United States side. When you turn to the United States side, you should immediately notice that the numbers on the side are different. Why is that? Because it's zoomed in. So you're going to notice that you've got 45, 40, 35, 30, 25. And we know that the United States is north of the equator. 1, because the numbers are getting bigger the higher you get. And 2, because when you look at the United States map, it is absolutely above the equator. Okay, whoops, we're over here. It's kind of hard to do this backward, guys. What do you expect, right? All right, so back to the United States side. If I am asking you to find a place on the United States map, first of all, it's always going to be degrees north. So I'm going to write that down now because I know that's what it's going to be. Okay, so I'm just going to have to figure out what number the place I'm looking for is. So if I said, I want to go to Houston, Texas. All right, so here's Houston. Now, if I trace my hand over here, there's no numbers because there's no side of the paper that goes over. Actually, what is happening is that you're actually going into the bottom numbers, even though it's slanted because Mexico and they put some extra maps down here. So what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to find Houston, Texas, and instead of going to the left, I'm going to go to the right. And look where I end up, 30 degrees. So Houston, Texas is 30 degrees north. And that's how I would write it. Number, degree sign, capital letter. Now, what if I said find something at 30 degrees north? Well, then I'd go to that 30 degrees north and I'd just follow the line and I'd see if I could find anything. Oh, Tallahassee, Florida happens to be in that area. If I went a little further, New Orleans, Louisiana. Good times there. There's my Houston, Texas. And the farther over I go. Now, it may be today that you are asked to find what is the line of latitude where the E in Mexico goes. So if you actually find the word Mexico and you look for the E, then you could follow that over 30 degrees. If we're up a little higher, we can use both sides of the map. So maybe I want to see where Salem, Oregon is. Salem, Oregon is right here. If you follow the line, obviously it's closer to go this way than it is to go all the way over here, and you might mess up along the way or get distracted. So Salem, Oregon, if I follow it over, is right at the 45 degrees north. So that's all you have to do is follow that baby over. Okay, again, we're only going east to west today, And we're only using the south and north measurements because it's, even though the lines run east to west, we're talking about dividing the earth into the northern and southern hemispheres, the top and the bottom of the earth. So just a reminder, my handy dandy little drawing again. North Pole is at 90 degrees. South Pole is at 90 degrees south. The middle of the earth, the belt, is 0 degrees. That is called the equator. All right. Southern hemisphere, northern hemisphere. The United States is in the northern hemisphere. When we think about things in the southern hemisphere, we think of the continent of Australia or South America or part of Africa. That's what we think of. Can a continent be in both hemispheres? Yeah, if it runs across the middle of it, sure it can. Okay, so your job today is to next fill in your notes packet for this section 2.4. Go back in the reading. You have the reading out. Go back in the reading if you need help finding an answer. And then later on, you're going to practice using this map to see how you're doing with finding latitude. Now, tomorrow I'll go back over it with you just to make sure, but please make sure you're trying really hard to find those places so that when we do longitude, it will be less confusing for you. Hey, it's all on you today to do your very best, and I know you can. All right. Good luck. Have a great rest of the day, and I will see you tomorrow.